How can we take more action? And not just action, but intentional action or risk averse. Focused. Much better word. Focused and intentional action. How can we take more action? That is where we are going to start today. The original intentions was to go over beliefs and goals. I was sitting down writing this and I realized it might be pretty long if I go through both. So I'm just going to go through beliefs, but I'm going to start with goals. And what I mean by that is if we're going to take more action, we need to have goals. We need to have goals laid out or an aim, right? We can't shoot at what we don't aim for. And so if you're shooting over here, but your aim is over here, you're not really aligned. And so that's what we want to change. Now, every course that I have ever been a part of or taken has started with what the course is about, what actions we're going to be doing, what your goals are for this course, for taking this course. And I'm not saying this is the course, I'm just saying, right, in those situations. And while you're taking this course, remember your goals. And so that's a good starting point, right, is where your goals are. And that's what you would normally think. And a lot of people just kind of keep it surface level like that. But what I want to do is take a step deeper into what drives you, because ultimately, I'm going to stop doing that. Ultimately, what you end up doing long term is emotionally driven, which is what we want to tap into, which is our beliefs. Now, originally I was going to go, like I said, over beliefs and goals, but the more I talked about beliefs, the more I realized we should probably talk more about beliefs first. So beliefs, and with beliefs, I'm not talking about religious or spiritual or anything like that. I'm talking about what you believe about yourself. What are the stories that you tell yourself? What are the emotions behind the events that you are going through, right? Because everyone has a different reaction to different situations. And so we want to understand what our beliefs are about us in these given situations. So what are you wanting to take more action on this year? Which is perfect video because it's a second, right? And this should be out by the time today's over, even though it's a little late. I have not done a very good job of acting today. I'm actually going to put this here. I have never even thought about this. Let's see if this works. Hold on. All right, you're learning real time with me. Don't make fun of me. Here we go. I need to be able to look at this. Actually, yeah, I'll leave it here. So, if you have a goal, let's say for argument's sake, New Year's resolution, right? Perfect for the new year. And you have these actionable steps laid out that you can take, and you end up taking these steps. Eventually, you'll get to the point where you're like, oh, I could pass a day, or oh, it's not important, like I can do another day. And what happens is your goals are laid out, right? In this case, your New Year's resolution. And I'm not against New Year's resolutions, but just using it for the sake of example, but your beliefs don't change, then eventually your action is going to become inconsistent action, and then it's eventually going to dissipate, right? So I think the standing statistics as of 2024 is, after the first month, only 36% of people are still working on their New Year's resolution, and only 9% actually end up finishing their New Year's resolution by the end of the year. But in the first month, 70% of us drop off. Why is that? Because our beliefs don't match, and they don't change with our intentions and our goals. So, taking our goals deeper, we want to look at our beliefs. Now I gotta flip this over. It's the first time I'm trying to use my actual outline. This is a lot to write down for me, so there we go. Now there's a quote: "He who has a why can bear almost anyhow." And, well, I said that spaced wrong, but he who has a why, has a strong enough why, can bear almost anyhow. I'm gonna write that down. Strong enough why can bear almost anyhow. Now, what does that mean? I think this is a quote from Nietzsche, and that takes us back to your why is your beliefs. Your beliefs and the emotion behind your beliefs. And so what does that take us? Well, if we have the knowledge, which is going to be our goals, right? I'm not going to write it all the way out. So we have the knowledge, we have the information that we know can get us there. In order to take that a step deeper, we have the emotion behind the knowledge. So when you're learning something and you take it to heart, our most intense experiences where we learn something, and especially in life, they have an emotion tied to it. Whether it's a trauma or a joyful experience, right? Emotion drives action, and it also drives inaction. So we have inaction and action. If you're scared of something, you're probably going to avoid it. If you are scared of failing, then you're probably going to chase. So emotion drives inaction or action. It can be both sides of the spectrum, and maybe I'll make something around inaction later on down the line. But once you have the knowledge, you choose to act on it, which is where we get to the emotion, and it's conscious, so you can consciously not act or act. So what we need to do is tap into the emotion behind our beliefs, right? And if we can do that, we can change our beliefs or our stories. If you want to, if you like your beliefs, then keep your stories, right? But we're talking about changing our beliefs to then take more action on our goals. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, what we're aiming for here. So if we can change our emotional response to the stories that we tell ourselves, for instance, you can use the alcoholic father, right? One child became super successful. One child was super abusive and an alcoholic on the street. Both of them said the reason they're that way is because of their father, who was an alcoholic. One went the entirely opposite way of the other one, but their reasoning was both the same. It's the emotion and the story that they applied to that experience, right? And so that's where we're going to tap into our beliefs. Now, the most effective method that I've learned to do this, and what I did when I figured out what my was, and we can get into that in a little bit, was when I came across something called the 7 levels. And I was first introduced to this by someone named Dean Graziosi, if you're familiar with him. And he also shares the same, my middle name is his first name. So anyways, the 7 levels, and what this is, let me clear some space off here. The 7 levels is essentially finding the emotion behind what your goal is, right? So if we write our goal down as, hey, I want to make a lot of money, well, that's a pretty big goal, right? So we want to take that a little bit further. We have, I want money. And this is where, we're just going to use this as a simple example, right? Everyone wants, or maybe I want to be rich. I don't know. To be rich. Right. Oh, we'll mark that out. Well, why? This is where the first question comes. Why do you want to be rich? Okay, so that's the first level. Ask the question around your goal. So if I say, I want to become a better speaker, which is ultimately my goal, why do I want to be a better speaker? Then you answer that question. Well, why do I want to be rich? To take care of my family. And you can put whatever you want, rich cars, stuff like that. So to take care of family. In this case, this is what I would do, right? Then you go to the second level. Well, why do you want to take care of your family? I'm not going to write it all out, but you get the gist. Well, okay, so why do you want to take care of your family? Well, we never had much growing up, right? And I guess that's more personal level. But why do you want to take care of your family? Because maybe we didn't have much. Maybe you want a better life for them, right? So you say, I kind of made a difficult one out of this, I feel like, but why do you want to take care of your family? We didn't have much. Or maybe even you can take this further, because they're going to get in more deep questions, right? Because I want them to succeed. This would be more personal for me, right? And you want to dig into, you don't want to be surface level, you want to dig into this. So because I want them to succeed. Right, this would be an actual answer for me. Okay, well, you get to 3. Why do you want them to succeed? You're going to get to, I think after 4 or 5, you start to get to the emotional, and you can feel it, right? Because at first, I just want money. Now, I want to take care of my family. Why do I want to take care of my family? Because I want them to succeed. Well, why do you want your family to succeed? Maybe you can answer that question to yourself. For me, watching people succeed fills me with joy, which is ultimately why I want to speak and help people. So you follow this right, so you're basically answering and then bringing that down and putting a why behind it. Why do I want that thing? And you do this, you get to 4, 5, 6, and ultimately 7. By the time you hit 5 or 6, you're starting to think pretty deep. Obviously, 3 and 4 for me are pretty deep already. Once you get to 5 and 6, then the emotion starts to show. And when I first did this, when I got to number 7, I was crying. So if you can get to 7, you can really find out what your why is. And this is how I found my why. And ultimately, what I realized is the reason I want to speak and share what knowledge I do have is because when I was a child, I experienced a lot of people in my life, and even now, that I knew could change, but they didn't believe that they could change. And so my why is, how can I show or lead people to change? They never thought possible. That is one of my whys. That is not my whole thing. I have multiple lists, or not lists, I guess the bullet point, or a list with multiple bullet points. But this is one of my whys, and I did this when I was doing the 7 levels for the first or second time, I think. And I do want you to understand that by doing the 7 levels, this doesn't set anything in stone, because your beliefs can change and your whys and your passions can change, especially as you're on the right path. So I would expect this to change over time as you get more knowledge of your future and what you are doing and what you are striving for. So in this case, we can use your yearly goals or your New Year's resolution and get into why you want to do that, and you add the 7 levels and you figure out the emotional impact behind why you want to do that. And if you can hold on to the emotional impact and the emotional drive of why you want that change in your life, it sucks because you have to dig inside your mind, right? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, because doing this, just finding this answer for me, the first time took me 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I don't remember the exact time. I didn't put a timer on, right? But it took me a really long time and a lot of digging to find this answer for myself. And it's entirely possible that's going to change the more knowledge that I get. Right. So it's something that's worth doing, even though you know it can change. And if you can do it and fight the first initial, oh, I'll do it later. Like, this is something that's very, very much changed my life. It put me down a path that I knew I wanted for myself, especially because I get the opportunity to now chase my dreams and what emotionally drives me, which is something that's roots back to my childhood and my living situation, right? But I digress, I won't get into that. If you can do the 7 levels and figure out what your why is behind the goal that you set, and it doesn't have to be for everything, right? But in this case, whatever goal you're setting will have a goal in mind. And now we're going into the beliefs behind that goal. And then this next episode, or this next, I don't know what you want to call this, step, I will go into more of the goal side, where we can tap into what we figured out on the 7 levels and put that into play so that we can make those goals come to fruition, right? And so I don't know what the last thing I wrote on here, but I was going to try and say it, but I have no freaking clue what it says. Your why can change over time. Okay, I already said that. This way going to be beliefs and goals. Oh, yeah, I can't read my handwriting. So this was going to be the goals and beliefs, but again, like I said earlier, I realized there's a lot more information that I could pack into this to help get this point across before I go to goals. So, you want to figure out your why behind the goal? If there is one. Hopefully there is one. Otherwise, you have goals for a reason, right? Then you just find the deeper meaning behind it. Figure out what the 7 levels is. This is the most effective method I've ever used. And I also got a little bit emotional. So take that as you will.